Hi there, welcome to session on Spring Data MongoDB. This is chapter 2 in the series. In first chapter we have seen how to set up Mongo database using MongoDB Atlas and use MongoDB Compass to query database. In that we have seen like how to use simple queries as well as how to use aggregation pipeline. In this chapter we will be using Spring Data MongoDB framework to query MongoDB database. Let's get started with creating Spring Data project. We can use Spring Initializer for creating our project. So first step is to add dependencies. We'll be adding Spring Web and Spring MongoDB dependencies over here. So first one is Spring Web and another one is Spring Data MongoDB. Make sure you select the Spring Data MongoDB and click on add. So here I will be creating project as a Maven project and rest of the details I will keep as it is. After clicking on generate, it will generate one zip file which we need to extract and import in our IDE. For this demo, I will be using IntelliJ. I have imported project in IntelliJ and now if I open pom.xml, we can see both the dependencies present over here, like first one Spring Data MongoDB and another one is Spring Boot Starter Web. As our project is ready, first step is to add MongoDB connection URLs. So that will be adding in application.properties. So if I go to source, main and resources, I will add connection string URLs over here and move to Spring Boot application class and start application. As we can see, application started successfully and able to connect to MongoDB database. And for this, all that needed is just adding one dependency in pom.xml, Spring Boot starter data MongoDB, and configuring application.properties with connection URL. That's all needed to connect for MongoDB database. Let's see how we can query this database using Spring Data MongoDB. Spring Data provides MongoTemplate and MongoRepository to communicate with Mongo database. We can use either of them, but when it comes to production application, I see Spring repositories are very helpful and easy to maintain. Nevertheless, we will be looking at both the approach in this tutorial, that is like using MongoDB template and MongoDB repositories, but I will recommend to follow Mongo repositories in production application. So let's get started with example of Mongo template. For this purpose, I will create one class with command line runner. For those who don't know what command line runner is, this is interface provided by Spring Framework which will act as entry point function to our code. So once we start our application, there needs to be some mechanism to invoke our database calls and all. So for that purpose, I am implementing this command line runner. Otherwise, you can also implement REST calls which will call internally these MongoDB repositories or template classes. You can think it as like main method in our Java application. So once our application bootstraps, then whatever components are present which implements this command line runner will get invoked one by one. Like if, for example, if there are multiple components implements this command line runner, then they will be invoked in sequentially. Now let's add logger for our class. And after this, we need to auto wire Mongo template dependency. MongoTemplate is a class provided by Spring Data MongoDB to communicate to our MongoDB database. So once we auto wire it, Spring will take care of creating this bin, configuring with correct connection URLs from application.properties and injecting in our application. So if we see, by default this Mongo templates provide many methods. For example, remove, find, insert, also drop collection. So this will act as an intermediary for all our queries, like whether it is insert, update or delete. Any operation we can perform using this MongoDB template. So first example we will take to identify all the movies released after year 2014. So for that purpose, let's take example from our MongoDB Compass. And here if I write query year greater than 2014. We can see there are about 486 movies which are released after 2014. So we'll see how we can write this same query in our code. So first step in the process is to create movies object. So we'll start with creating one new package for all our collections. We will annotate it with document. This name of the class should match with collection name over here. So you can see here like movies is there. So I have defined the same class and annotated with document annotation. It's not mandatory to specify each and every field present over here. We can just specify few for this demo purpose. So most important field is this ID, private string ID, and I will annotate this with ID annotation. So this will help Spring to understand how he need to map result received after query and few other fields. So for example, title, year, and I will generate a few constructor. So I have added these three fields, one no argument constructor and one constructor which takes two argument. Apart from that, setter getter and two string method. And if you compare this field name exactly matches with whatever name present in the document. So for example, title, this matches exactly with this word. So we should not be keeping any another name apart from that. And this year is same as year present over here. So once we have configured this document, we can move to our template runner to query this document from Mongo database. For that purpose, even within MongoDB template, there are two ways which you can define the query. So first one is basic query and another one is just query. So I'll show you both the examples. First one with basic query. So first I will provide here query. For that I will copy this query as it is and paste it over here. And then I will use this Mongo template to query the database. Find, provide this basic query object and class to which I need to map a result of this find query. So here I will provide movies.class and assign this result to local variable. Now if I add log statement, there are many movies present in the list. I will just use this size operator and rerun again to match the count with database. So we can see there are about 486 movies released after year 2014, and if we match with our compass result, we can see same like 486 results are present. This basic query is simple to use, but you might have noticed there is one issue with using this basic query. So for example, let's say if I perform some mistake like for this greater than operator, let's say instead of this dollar I have used this hash, there is no way to identify this mistake during compile time. We'll only notice this issue while running the application. So for that purpose, we will be using another method like query construct to define our queries. So let's see how we can do that. So for that purpose, we need to define query object. We'll be using query method of query class. So this is static method which takes criteria. So here we'll take criteria where here we'll define our field year 2014. And we'll be using same Mongo template for query. So find here query and class to which we need to cast this result. So here instead of basic query, this is actual query result, and here I need to use this same variable query movies. And now if I rerun our application, so as you can see our basic query also resulted 486, and normal query also resulted 486. For some reason, if you decided to go with this Mongo template to query our database, I will recommend to use this query criteria only, because with this you will able to identify if there are any compile time issues with your query. Otherwise, with basic query, this is simple to use, but you can't find compile time errors with this query. Now we have seen how to use this Mongo template. There is another better way to perform these queries, and that is using Mongo repository. So let's see how we can do that. So for that purpose, I will define one more command line runner and call it as Mongo repository runner. So when we bootstrap our application, then both these command line runners will get executed in sequence. I will create one more package here called as repository. I will create one more interface called movies repository and extend to Mongo repository. First argument it takes like which collection we are trying to access. So here movies, and after that what is type of ID. So here we are using string IDs. I have provided like string here and annotate this with repository annotation. That's all needed to establish few predefined queries to our MongoDB collection. So if I go to MongoDB repository runner and inject this repository, movies repository, I will able to access basic information from database. Let's say I want to find any document. So for that purpose, I can write query something like this: Mongo repository find by ID, and provide ID here from our compass. So for example, this one, if I provide this ID over here, movie by ID, and if I log this one, we can see the result. I will just copy paste this logger statement and log this info. This is find by ID example. And if I rerun up our application now, so as we can see, our find by ID method resulted in this movie. And if we compare this result with our compass, we can see here title is Jurassic World and year is 2015. So which exactly matches with our compass results. You might be wondering like how all this implementation is happening, because if I move to this Mongo repository, it's just an interface. It don't provide any methods. So for this, Spring does all the magic behind. So there are like multiple interfaces which comes into picture. For example, our movies repository interface extend to Mongo repository. And if I go inside this Mongo repository, it also extends few other interfaces. And if I open structure for this Mongo repository, we can see like there are few methods defined in this repository, and few methods are inherited from these parent interfaces. So we can see there are total huge number of methods which are already present. And if I group by this all methods, then you can see this list crud repository is providing few methods like save all, find all. Basic crud repository is providing basic operations like save, find by ID, count, delete, and so on. So I am free to use any of these methods which is present or which is provided by these interfaces. So if I go to this Mongo repository runner, enter control space, then you can see we are free to use all these methods. I can even perform insert on that object. So for example, let's say Mongo repository insert, and I create here new movie, and I can just insert this document inside collection. If I rerun this program, then you can see our find by ID resulting into same Jurassic World movie. And if I go to compass over here and see newly added record, yeah, and with the same details which we have provided, like year 2023 and movie title. You might be wondering like how Spring Data JPA is able to construct these queries. So for if you want to understand what queries will be constructed out of this, then you can add like few properties to our application.properties file. So I have added this MongoDB logging level info, and for repository and template logging level is debug, so that we can see all the queries which are getting constructed behind the scene. Now if I rerun my program, so we can see how these queries are getting constructed. So this first query is for find by id method, and second one is from our mongo template, like find where year is greater than 2014. Similarly, insert, I can perform delete operation as well. So for that purpose, let's say delete by id, and I will provide, let's say, this first id. Let's comment this insertion part and execute program again. So now if I check our database again, then we can see only one record is present. If we look into more detail, we can see find method is like either gives us all the document or find by ID. But what if we want to find by some criteria? So for that purpose, here find all method is present, which takes example as a input parameter. So for that, let's create one more object called as movies, and I will just set year to this one, 2023. Now I'll create example out of this object, example of movies by example, and assign it to one variable, and provide this to find all method, and assign this result to one of the local variable, all movies with example. Now if I log this, for time being I will just comment other Mongo template runner because it is cluttering our log. So I'll just comment this, and if I execute our program again, then we can see the result, all movies matching with this year fields. It matched with all the documents present in the collection and identified only one movie matches with this given example where year was set to 2023 and returned us this result. So we can see, if even if I compare this with our compass result, it will show us the same output of the query. As we can see, there are two ways by which we can find document without writing any single line of code. All this implementation is understood by Spring Data Framework, and Spring Data will internally create queries for this method and return us back the result. Spring Data provides one more additional way to construct the queries. So for example, we can see there is so much code is written for getting all the movies which is matching to year 2023. This all code can be simplified by adding one new method to this movies repository, that is find by year, and here string year. and this method returns list of movies. Once you define any method over here with this particular syntax, like starting with find by and then year and input parameter to which this year needs to be matched, Spring framework internally understands this method and he will construct query out of it. So let's see how we can use this method in our runner class. So here I will write one more query here, find by and provide here year, list of movies, and if I log this example and if I rerun this code, you can see all movies with example and our movies both are resulted into same result, like title is Ant-Man 2023 and year is 2023. So internally Spring parsed this method and constructed query out of this. There are multiple ways by which you can construct the queries. Let's say if I want to find top 10 movies released after year 2014. So for that I can write one more method like find top 10 by year greater than, here it will take parameter as integer and year. So if you compare difference between these two queries, here I have inserted top 10. Here you can insert like any number of results you want, for example top 100 or 150 or anything. And after that field which I want to compare, and after that which operation I want to perform. So this is greater than. So now if I execute this query again and I will comment all these previous queries, and log this dot size. So my expectation is it should just give me top 10 result out of this. So you can see here top 10 greater than, this log statement give me 10 count. So whatever collection resulted after this find by top 10 query just has only 10 records. We have covered quite a lot concept in this video, so we'll take a pause here. In next session we'll do more deep dive in Spring Data MongoDB. Thank you for watching.